Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 76 of the Mountain Bike Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Cayley, and today I am not joined by Jared because he is in Palm Springs relaxing in the sun, tanning his feet, painting his toenails, but we have an excellent replacement, Mr. Liam Woods.
Hi, guys.
Great intro. Liam Woods has been on the Worldwide Cycler team for several years and started out as the head mechanic, and now he does a million different things. What do you do, Liam?
Well, I still take on some of those head mechanic roles and some detailed bike builds. More than that, I do a lot of media and marketing would be a umbrella term. Everything from reviewing products, writing blogs, doing some website pages and landing pages to some descriptions here and there. I also do manage a lot of the merch, the Worldwide Cyclery merch as well.
A lot of hats.
A lot of hats, working on some other projects as well. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, solid. Love it. Well, Liam, if for you guys that didn't catch that or notice, a lot of the YouTube videos we do are all accompanied by blog articles, and the blog articles have a lot more in-depth technical sort of writing and analysis on all of the products, and they go way more in detail than I typically go on the YouTube videos. Liam writes all those articles. He is like an extremely well-versed, knowledgeable bicycle nerd, you could say. So we're going to utilize that talent and that knowledge he has in this episode and talk a good bit about bike tech stuff that should hopefully be helpful to all of you guys. And I also recently just got a note here that it's episode 77, not 76. So for all of you listening, sorry about that if I confused you. Moving on.
The notes are wrong.
Yeah. Well, I typed those notes, so that was my fault.
You are wrong.
A lot of we're still getting used to the podcast thing. We're still working out some kinks in the audio. We also were working out some situations where if people get too far away from the microphone, I thought it was a good idea to buy a Nerf gun that DJ Pineapple over here could shoot the person in the neck when they. That's the sound of a Nerf gun. Jiminy Christmas. I thought it'd be a good idea if somebody leans too far away from the mic, shoot him in the neck with a Nerf gun to let him know to lean closer to the mic. And we got too powerful of a Nerf gun, and it'd probably really hurt if you got hit in the face with it. Anyways, we're still working out some of the kinks here. If you want to see the Nerf gun, we are now putting these podcasts on a new YouTube channel. That's an MTB podcast YouTube channel. They're pretty boring. I was told I can't even look at the camera because, you should turn the volume down there. I was told I can't even look at the camera because it makes the audio bad. So anyways, before we dive into the bike tech stuff, I wanted to give a quick update on the bike industry as a whole. And I think everyone kind of already knows where it's at. There was insane demand because of COVID, and now we're in this situation of really, really bad inventory levels of anything and everything. It is slowly starting to come back to normal and things are trickling in, but the entire supply chain has just been thrashed in terms of products taking forever to show up and delays of freight and all sorts of stuff. So it's hard to find what you need to find, whether you're looking for a pair of gloves or tires or an entire new bike or, I don't know, just about anything. What is in stock?
I'd probably say drivetrain components is what I see that's most in stock. Tires trickle in and shipments of, a couple hundred, but it's a specific tire that comes in. So Maxxis Minion DHF might be in stock in an EXO, but out of stock in a double down and DH casing. So
yeah,
just is really sporadic.
Yeah. Tires have been hit or miss like most things, but they've seemingly been there a little bit more than some of the other stuff. So because of that, I am very curious what's going to happen with Black Friday, Cyber Monday. What we're going to do, and I mentioned this on the last episode, is we are actually going to be not doing a sale like we normally do, but rather we are going to do a non-sale for NICA. So NICA, the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. That's really hard. Try and say that, Liam.
I don't want to. NICA.
They have basically, they're a nonprofit that has made the sport of mountain biking an accredited sport in high schools all across North America. An incredible organization that I really respect because I just think they're getting more kids on bikes, which is awesome. And we are going to raise prices on every single product on our site, $5. So, and that $5, if you buy anything, those $5 in whole will be donated to NICA. We're also not raising the prices on our gift cards, but we're still donating $5. So if you buy a $100 gift card, you get a $100 gift card, but then we cover the $5 to NICA. And I'm still challenging our other retailers, our other competitors in the bike industry to admit their subpar inventory levels and actually do something philanthropic for Black Friday. So do you think anyone will do that, Liam?
At this point, we're a couple weeks out. It's possible. It's possible. Maybe a smaller guy. I don't think any bigger ones will jump on that at this point.
Yeah,
if they haven't already.
I'd be surprised if somebody is listening or cares to do that and probably just wants to bask in the, boost the top line revenue, do the typical Black Friday sale. But I think Black Friday is going to be interesting for a lot of industries, especially the bike industry, and just the influx, the additional volume that like e-commerce in general, online shopping has seen throughout the pandemic. So anyways, there's your quick update on the bike industry and sort of what to expect for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I'm sure there'll still be some good sales out there and some cool stuff going on. But yeah, might be a lot harder to find what you wanted to get on sale this year than maybe what you did last year if you were trying to sneak some good bicycle industry buys during BFCM. So to jump into the bike tech stuff, we're going to go over high-rise bars, pros and cons, bike maintenance tips for weekend trips in particular, and then tire combos. So our favorite combos, personal preferences, and how Liam is actually a good bit different than me when it comes to preferences. And then we're going to end, of course, with what we're riding, bikes, components, all of that. So jumping in, high-rise bars, pros and cons. We did a YouTube video on high-rise bars, and it was very well received. The reason we did that video, the reason we do a lot of videos is because we see sales data. High-rise bars have been getting more and more popular over the last 3 years, would you say?
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
Definitely the last year it's jumped a lot.
Yeah, it has. And I think people are just noticing, people love to experiment with their bike and change things up. And bars are a pretty noticeable one. If your bike came with a, 15 or 20 mil riser bar and you put a 35 on it, it's a pretty significant, like anyone will notice that change. And there's pros and cons to it, and it does different things. I would like to, kind of caution people to, experiment if you think it's fun, but also high-rise bars usually solve a problem. And usually that problem is if you feel like you're too leaned forward on your bike currently, and like you feel like you're going over the bars or your lower back is aching after rides, those are usually the problems, would you say, that like people would help people solve with high-rise bars?
Yeah, I think so. I think, those are like the pretty obvious ones. Back pain, you feel like you too far over the front, especially in rock gardens and steeper sections. So that's where I think, it's really easy to know if you need one. Another thing why I think they've gotten more popular is bikes that keep getting longer and longer. So that also kind of stretches you out and therefore puts your weight a little bit more over the front end as the bikes get longer. So I think bringing that front end up, you kind of get the best of both worlds. Easily. Yeah. By bringing your body position up, but you still get a long wheelbase and a stable bike. So those kind of go hand in hand with just what's being popular.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, bikes are evolving pretty quickly every year that goes by. They get longer, lower, and slacker, as the saying goes. And yeah, adjusting your own personal bike geo to make it feel more comfortable for you can help you ride the thing better and overall just give you a better ride. And like in the video I talk about, and it's pretty visual in the sense that, bikes are purpose built for a reason, right? So if you look at a World Cup cross country race bike, they're very leaned forward and pointed down because they're made predominantly for going fast on flat ground and up hills and keeping the rider in an aerodynamic dynamic position, which is a totally different concept than what you'd be doing with an enduro bike, or especially a downhill bike, which are going to be a lot more upright because they're made for predominantly being pointed downhill and riding at speed and at their limit going downhill. So just something to consider there. But yeah, when it comes to a trail bike or an enduro bike, you can kind of go either way. If you are more of a climber and you're climbing a lot, lowering the front end might actually help your climbing and help your body position. But I think in our experience, most people are not super big climbers all the time these days. We definitely serve more of the baggy short crowd of enduro and trail riders, and that's the crowd that can think like, wow, a high-rise bar might actually help my back feel better, might make me feel more confident on downhill, make it a little bit easier to lift up that front wheel if I'm trying to like hop over a rock or pull a wheelie or a manual. Pretty interesting. Something I would like to elaborate on that I don't talk about in the video a ton is like my own personal preference, which for me, on a trail bike, I'm probably always going to run a 20 mil rise bar. I'm never really going to go high. That's because, I grew up racing downhill and racing, Super D, which is now just enduro. And I just like the feeling of, I won't say a low front end, but, I think it's as high as it needs to be. I like that in terms of like the attack position and cornering and just lower center of gravity. I get why not everyone would like that, but that's my own preference. So yeah, I probably won't run a really high rise bar. Maybe when I'm 45 or 55 and my lower back hurts. But what about you, Liam?
Don't categorize age. Menard just won a World Cup.
Yeah, but I bet his back doesn't hurt.
And he also runs a high setup.
Yeah, he does. Like a lot of those Santa Cruz guys run like unusually high setups for sure.
I think you personally do run a slightly lower than average front end as well. Just to touch on your personal preference, like you're on most bikes, your stem's pretty low on the stack height. You run a 20 mil bar, so I think for myself, it's more or less finding the balance and what the bike's made for, right? My SP130, I have a little bit more setup to go downhill, so I'm going to sacrifice a little bit on that uphill climbing position to have a better downhill feel.
Yep.
Like this morning, I was climbing a technical trail, and I wish my bars were like 20, 30 mil lower to climb that, but then I went down a downhill trail right after it, so where my bars were at a perfect height. So I think it depends on what your situation is as well. Just finding the balance. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Balance is a good word for it, right? Cause it's like, what are you doing mostly? What do you care about the most? I mean, unfortunately, like there is pretty much everything you do that makes your bike work better on a downhill is going to make it work worse on an uphill.
Yeah.
I like that concept of like finding a balance, which for most people could be a higher rise bar. Cause for some reason, like most, over the years, we've seen all these different bike brands like get their build kits way better, right? They all figured out like, oh, everyone who buys our bike puts a shorter stem and wider bars on it. Maybe next year we should just spec it with that. Over the years, bikes have come with way better and better, just like out of the box build specs, but no one's doing high rise bars like out of the box build specs that I've seen. Like everyone's still doing pretty low bars, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd say Evil on the complete builds, I noticed that I think a year or two ago, are coming with 30 or 35 mil riser bars.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that kind of fits the brand's MO, right?
Yeah, it does. They're definitely always ahead of the curve when it comes to that sort of thing.
And just kind of, more get to the top and have a lot of fun in the downhill is that kind of brand. And that's kind of what a higher rise bar most of the time lends itself to. Is you can climb fine, obviously. It just won't be as efficient or attack position while you're climbing. But you're going to have a little bit more, I guess I should say, it's a little easier to pull up that front end when you're going downhill and jumping around like you kind of would on an Evil.
Yep. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then you look at a brand like Yeti, which is like, what's their slogan? It's like race driven. Yeah. So like, they're less in terms of that playful thing. So like they're probably never going to spec their bikes with high rise bars like that. Yeah. So I don't know, something to consider if you've currently got a bike that you feel like you're a little too far leaned forward on it, and it has 20 or 10 or 15 mil rise bars. Peek around at something that's like 30, 35. It's definitely something that's like getting trendy, and you know, a lot of people, like for us, like when we see things trend like that, like a certain type of product, there's always a reason, and a lot of times it's like, you know, the reasons are, it's almost like a discovery process. Like people start discovering like something that they put on their bike that makes it work way better, and then it hits a tipping point and they tell their buddies, and their buddies are like, oh, that's a great idea, and then they try that and that works, and then it like hits this tipping point, and then all of a sudden it starts trending, and then, you know, becomes sort of a staple. But that's definitely what's going on with high rise bars in the last few years, and especially like you said, in the last 1 year.
Yeah.
So something to consider. If more context on the whole thing, check out our YouTube video on it if you haven't already seen it. Next topic. This one is your wheelhouse, Liam. Bike maintenance on weekend trips. So the weekend trips, I think, is kind of important there, because it's, you know, if you're just doing general bike maintenance, like usually going out, leaving home, going for a ride, coming back home, like you have like your tools and everything. But a weekend trip, you're probably like taking a toolkit with you, right? Or like you're taking a little mobile sort of stash, especially if you're going on like a, you know, a shorter or even like a 3-day trip. Liam and I just went on a trip with Chasing Epic to Moab, which we rode for 4 days, and we drove there. So we took a hell of a mobile toolkit.
Yeah, more than your average toolkit.
Yeah,
for sure. But still kind of have that same situation of like, we don't have a chain cleaner, we don't have a hose. The normal stuff we would clean a bike with, we didn't have. So I think bike maintenance, you know, really is like, what do you need to touch up on a weekend trip? And especially if you're doing, usually when you go out on a trip, you do a little bit bigger ride than you're going to do at home.
Yeah,
so your bike gets a little bit more thrashed, chain gets dirtier, more dry. You might need to check some more bolts, like Bino, our buddy Brandon.
Yeah, his bike. Well, there was a couple people on this trip we were riding with whose bikes like were like, wow, that's not sounding so good. And then it was like, yeah, you have 3 loose pivot bolts. Do you know you should tighten these more often?
Yeah. So you're gonna be riding a bit longer. So you definitely need to touch up on some stuff. I think, yeah, the main thing is having a good rag, cleaning out your chain pretty well, adding your chain lubricant, and it's specific to where you're going too, right? If you're going to a very, very dry area like Moab, you need a really good dry chain lube. You don't want to show up with a wet chain lube, because your drive chain is going to get worse and worse over 3 days, then better and better. Now, if you're taking a trip to Washington this time of year and it's raining off and on every day, pack that wet chain lube. So it's definitely specific to that. But yeah, keeping your chain clean, wiping it down with the rag, applying lube. And it can't hurt just to do it twice, right? Like wipe it down dry, add chain lube, wipe it down again, kind of get just more of that gunk off the chain, and then adding a little bit more lube and just going that route. I think on a trip like that, you're doing bigger rides, it's gonna keep your chain a little bit more lubed for a longer time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Something I wish we would have brought to Moab was just a cassette brush.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like it was so dusty, and the dust was so fine powder, like our chains and our cassettes and pulley wheels on the derailleurs really kind of just like eventually got, you know, just gummed up. And without a hose and a chain cleaner and like a whole, you know, setup we would have at the shop or at home, a cassette brush, which, I mean, Park Tool sells them for like $12 or something.
I don't even know for that much.
Yeah, they might not even be that much. It's a very simple, small tool that you should have at home and really easy to travel with. But yeah, cassette brush, really good microfiber rags to help clean your chain and wipe down the other various areas of your bike, like stanchions and dropper posts. And then chain lube, of course, like those are like clutch. And then the other thing for me is like, I like doing a full-on bolt check, which I was one of the few people there who was doing proper bolt checks, but that's probably just burned into my brain from being a racer. I don't know. You tell me how important you think that is.
No, I mean, I think it's important after, what was it? I think Captain Ahab, that day, it was day 2, I bashed my chain guide 3 or 4 times, probably 3 or 4 more times than I have out in SoCal.
Yep.
And my chain guide was loose. My rear derailleur bolt was slightly loose. One of my shock bolts was slightly loose. And I always check cranks and pedals as well. Almost every other ride, even at home. So I definitely think doing a good bolt check is also pretty key on those trips. I mean, the last thing you want to do is be a couple hours out from your car, let alone any tools or maintenance, and have a crank fall off or a pedal fall off or a derailleur get loose, shifting gets messed up, so leads to bigger issues.
Yep.
And actually will start damaging a bike and could ruin your trip. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the key things I go to are like rear derailleur. For some reason, rear derailleurs just kind of like to wiggle themselves loose depending on where you're riding. Cranks, pedals, axles, those are like my sort of like instant go-tos. Am I missing anything? Those like
rotor bolts.
Yeah, rotor bolts. I always used to check those, but I don't think I've ever found one come loose. I've had a center lock rotor probably multiple times come loose, but I've never just like regular old 6-bolt rotors. Like I've never had those really come loose.
Yeah, I think they still do. I think it's one of those things where, especially if you're riding a newer bike on a trip, I definitely
newer
check
bike
those.
is a whole different ball game of like making sure things are tighter.
Yeah, if you have a 6-month-old bike, year-old bike, and you've been checking those a couple of times, like usually they find their snug spot and stay, but I'd always be safe. Again, why risk it on a trip when it's like check a couple bolts?
Yeah, it doesn't take long to just run through that stuff. Like, if you're done with your ride, run through all that stuff, get your bike dialed in, and then tomorrow morning wake up and know that your bike is all ready to go. Yeah, that's key. And I think pivot bolts are always important to check. I mean, that's kind of dependent on your bike and where you're riding and all of that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I always check. I mean, I was riding my Uno out in Moab, and I mean, I've checked the pivot bolts on that Uno. I mean, tons of times, like all this local at home, I go through that sort of little race prep as well as in Moab. Like I've never had a loose pivot bolt. Like that bike just that bike wasn't prone to them, but some bikes are just more prone to loose pivot bolts than others. And, especially like, if it's a newer bike, pivots are way more important to check than if it's like a little bit older, but pivots are probably, I always go like cranks, pedals, rear derailleur, axles, brake rotor bolts, pivots. Those are really key things to like just double check.
Yeah.
What else weekend trip wise would be like good just maintenance things to have?
I mean, before you go on a weekend trip, tire sealant.
Yeah. Preparation is key here. Yeah.
Prep's a lot of
everything
it, right?
we just said was only relevant if you properly prepped your bike before your weekend trip.
Yeah. So definitely tire sealant before you go. I don't know. I think on the trip, really it's chain. I wipe down the stanchions with a very clean microfiber that's like specific to just stanchions. And
have one microfiber for your stanchions. Don't get it confused with the one for your chain, please. Yeah. Totally different.
So stanchions, chain, bolt check. Is really it. I mean, do those 3 things and
a
the
little
bolt check.
cassette brush, just scrub off that cassette and chain and pulley wheels before you do your little chain lube and clean. Yep.
Yeah, I think you'll have a successful trip and hopefully don't have any bike issues.
Yep.
And no tire issues, which kind of...
Yeah, it's a good segue into the next topic, right? Tires. So tires, we talk about tires so much, whether it's just internally amongst arguing the staff here or it's on YouTube. We have a whole tires playlist because we've made so many different videos about various tire things. The recent one we did was tire combos. I thought that would be like just a helpful video in a sense because, a lot of people just want to like kind of have the mentality of just tell me what to buy already. Like I've been researching tires and my brain's going to explode. I don't know what's good. Just tell me what to buy. So the tire combos video, the idea was to kind of just demystify it, simplify it. Like, hey, here are my favorite combos. Here's what I think the best combos are and the best combos and most popular combos for downhill all the way to enduro, then to trail, then to XC. I didn't include a whole bunch of Maxxis tires. So this was just Maxxis tires. Once again, trying to simplify it, let alone all the other various brands you could do, but just Maxxis tires. And I didn't even include like a whole ton of Maxxis models just in my opinion, the best ones, the best combos for those various types of riding. So I think it helped. It definitely got a lot of good feedback, but it also got, of course, what we expected, which was like, oh yeah, but you forgot the high roller too, and you forgot this, and like, oh, that was great, but could you do it with Schwalbe? Because I only ride Schwalbe. And it's like, okay, well, the tires topic just never ends. Something we didn't touch on there too much was casings and compounds, and I think probably casings is a little more important than compounds, but so just like a recap of that video, on the downhill side, it was the Maxxis Assegai front and rear. I think the Assegai is like the grippiest tire ever. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Almost every condition, it's going to be probably the grippiest tire you can get.
Yeah, that thing is incredible. I mean, it certainly is not lightweight and it doesn't roll fast, but that's not the point.
No.
The dissector, then, so like a cool combo is an Assegai dissector. So Assegai in the front, dissector in the back. That lightens your rear end up and makes it roll a bit faster, which I thought which is a pretty dialed setup. I definitely enjoyed that because dissector is quite a bit different than the Assegai for sure. I mean, totally different tread pattern and everything. Then another tire setup, which to lighten it up even a bit more, which this was the one I ran in New Zealand when I was there for a week riding with New Zealand mountain biking. I did a DHR2 in the front and a dissector in the back. And I think was EXO both on that tire setup, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then beyond that, then what I normally ride locally almost all the time is a DHR2 in the front, and then a Recon in the back, which is even lighter weight. It's kind of like almost like an XC tire probably.
Yeah.
EXO on both of those.
And 2.4.
Yeah, and 2.4. So that's like my most common go-to is a DHR2 Recon, EXO, and then 2.4. So that's like my most common trail bike setup. I change it up depending on where I'm going. Like, when we went to Moab, I did Assegai in the front, 2.5.
Yeah.
And then what was in the rear?
Dissector
2.4.
And those are EXO Plus casing.
EXO Plus, yeah. So you have like EXO Plus, which is a little bit more durable.
Just a touch,
Just a touch. And then Double Down, which is yet again a little bit more durable.
It's actually two 120 TPI casings. So it's two XC tire casings on top of each other.
Yeah. So Double Down's like significantly more robust than even an EXO Plus.
Yeah.
And like way more robust than an EXO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then downhill, which is like pretty rare. I mean, that's like a really robust, like the downhill casing is hardcore. So yeah, I mean, tire casing, that's where it gets interesting because I'm only 150 pounds. I'm a small guy, so I don't really care to run heavy duty tires. I also am just a weight weenie. So like, even if I'm going somewhere where I probably should be running Double Down, I just don't want to. I'd rather ride EXO Plus or maybe even try and get away with EXO. Maybe not the best thing to recommend, but I don't know. It's just kind of my preference, but you're a bit differently and you're always running way heavier tires than I ever would.
Yeah. On my trail bike and Duro bike, usually have two bikes. I have a lighter weight, shorter travel bike, and then a more heavy duty, more travel bike. I don't categorize them that much. I just kind of ride them as they are. Right now I'm on an SP130. It's built up basically as beefy as you can make a SP130.
Lunch Ride plus.
Lunch Ride Plus, yeah.
Lunch, for those that don't know, Yeti does offer the SP130, 29-inch wheel travel, 130 in the back, and they're 150 in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they offer like a variant called the Lunch Ride, which is 160 in the front, and then they have a longer stroke rear shock on it
for 137 out back.
Yeah, so that's what they call their. Is that only on the 130? Like that's
Correct,
the only one.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's what they call their quote unquote Lunch Ride. So when I was saying Lunch Ride plus, I was saying Liam's 130 is built up like even more beefy and robust than like what Yeti considers their beefy, robust Lunch Ride to be.
Yep.
So you overbiked that thing.
I overbiked it a lot, which also leads to over specking tires.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Most of my bikes, I like the Maxxis Minion DHR2. I think it has a really good rolling speed to kind of consistent grip. It's not going to be the most grippy. It's not an ass guy, but I think it's the most consistent riding locally. Going to Moab, I can go to, northern Utah, which I was at earlier this summer, go to Santa Cruz. It's just kind of like the most consistent tire I find.
And it's versatile. It
And
clears mud really well.
Totally, yeah.
And it works great in the dust. So
Yeah. And another cool thing is you run two of the same tires. You wear out the rear, front to the back, only buy one tire. Little money saving trick. But yeah, so on that SB130, I'm running DHR2 2.4 front double down casing. In the back, same tire, Minion DHR2 2.4 downhill casing. So definitely on the most or more aggressive side of tire casings. I originally built the bike up with double down to do the wear out trick front to back and keep buying a new front tire. Bike was like 4 days old, I think, in Park City, and I sliced a double down tire.
Yeah.
So I threw a DH on because that's what I brought as a backup, and I've kind of ran the DH for the rest of the summer. I will say when I was riding that bike in Moab, after I think second day, I was over that downhill casing tire, climbing 5,000 feet.
Yeah, we did a lot of climbing.
And I wish I had brought more of like an EXO plus front, double down rear, just line it up a little bit. But my thought behind the big casing is I can run slightly lower tire pressures, not ruin rims. Again, I'm only 150 pounds, same with Jeff. So traction is a hard thing to do at our weight because we don't have really the weight just all out gripping the tires. Yet if I take a dumb line and I jump into some rocks, I don't want to smash rim.
Yep.
So it's definitely a fine balance, and I think the thicker tire casings help with that. Kind of taking more dumb lines and making it through without ruining a rim or slicing a tire.
Yeah. It's pretty, like, it does need to be, you're gonna be thoughtful with it. And what I mean by that is, like, if your riding style is to like aggressively slash corners and kind of jump into rock gardens at full speed, or try and gap them and potentially not totally clear them and land halfway in them. Yeah. So like, and you're kind of notorious for dinging rims, then if you're notorious for dinging rims and riding in the way I just described, you're probably also like notorious for slicing tires open. And like, you just need to learn who you are and where you're riding, and then realize like, wow, at what point do I need to go double down casing? At what point do I need to go downhill? Or at what point do maybe I need to step down? Like, man, I've had double down for a long time since they came out, and I've never once hit the rim. Like, I don't know, you could probably shave some weight off your bike and run the same tires in an EXO casing or EXO plus. And it's always nice to shave weight on like something that has rotational weight like tires. So I mean, it does just need some thought, and it really does come down to like where you're riding and how you're riding. And then just like your past experience, like, are you gentle on the bike? How much do you weigh? Bigger guys are gonna have a different situation when it comes to slicing tires and trashing rims and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, it just takes some thought, and it does take some experience of just like being on the bike for a couple of years or so, which makes it a hard topic for people who are newer to the sport, because then they're like, well, what do I get? Like, I don't really know exactly where I'm going to ride.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, oh, I don't know. it's tough.
Yeah. I will say though, I think tires are like my favorite thing about a bike, because you just by the swap of a tire, you can make a bike feel differently.
Yeah, very true.
And it's also, they're expensive, but they're not very expensive in the grand scheme of like mid to high end mountain bikes.
Yeah.
So
it's like a pretty inexpensive like thing that makes a dramatic change to how your bike performs.
Definitely. You go from an EXO casing and a downhill casing, same tread, same width, it's going to feel completely different on trail. And I think I've just, on the bigger bikes, I've just kind of gotten used to that thicker tire feel, and I just like it more. It's a really hard thing to explain, but it just has a different feel to it. So I think it's a great thing to experiment with. I'm a complete tire nerd. I have a full spreadsheet that breaks down model to width to weight to casing across pretty much Maxxis, WTB, Schwalbe, just to kind of find that, like, again, it's a balance, right? To find that weight to toughness to grip ratio, and just trying to get that right for where I'm riding and how I want to ride that bike.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think yeah, it is super fun to experiment with. And it does boil back down to, like, if you're new to it or you're changing tire brands, like, it's probably smarter to, err on the side of thicker casing tires. Cause, like, just think about it. Like, if you're just doing little 30-minute loops from your house and you're not too worried about it, and you just want your bike to be lighter, and, like, yeah, maybe step down to an EXO and just go for it. But if you're going on these, like, more extensive 2, 3, 4 hour rides, or you're, driving an hour to go ride somewhere, like, the less you want that tire to rip in that case. So yeah, just consider that. I'm usually, like, my trail bike that I ride locally all the time, I'm really just doing rides that are not that far away from home and from the shop here. So I run lighter, sketchier tires because, like, I like how light they are and how efficient the bike feels with them. And I'm not too worried about slashing them because, I don't know, then my bike ride just turns into a hike, and that doesn't really bother me too much. But sometimes it might bother you if you need to get home because you have a wife and kids. I don't.
Yeah, and maybe that's another reason why I do lean towards bigger tires too. I do some Santa Barbara backcountry rides, or head out on trips and stuff. And yeah, the last thing I want is to slice a tire 20, 30 miles out from my car. Like, yeah, that's a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're limping a tube. I think every time you put a tube in, you're going to flat again. It's almost a guarantee.
Yeah.
So I'd rather not flat the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. Different mentalities, a lot of personal preference, and just where you're riding, what you're riding, how you're riding. A lot goes into it, which is why it's such a confusing topic. So, endless array of things on the internet to learn more about tires. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully there's enough to start out with.
You could say you go in circles with tires.
You could say you go in circles with tires. I'm sure a lot of people feel like that. Well, to move on from tires, let's finish it out with what we're riding, and obviously mention the tires on those bikes. So I, previously had been riding an Uno Dash. It just sold and went out of the shop today. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna dearly miss that bike. I really, really liked that bike. But I'm currently building a Revel Ranger, which I'm really excited about. And that is a Revel's downcountry bike. So 120 millimeters of travel in the front, 115 in the back. I think it's going to be an amazing bike for local stuff. And basically when they came out with that, and we were like, wow, this is like the Conejo Valley. We live in the Conejo Valley area. So I was like, this is the Conejo Valley bike. And I think Liam and I agreed on that one. Yeah, that's like still in the build process. But what tires am I even putting on that? I forgot. Liam, if you didn't catch this already, I don't do a ton of my bike stuff. Liam really takes care of most of it for me because he's good at it.
On that one, we're actually going with the Revel spec pretty much. So
yeah, which is Dissector Recon, right? Yeah.
2424.
Which is even lighter than a DHR2 Recon. Yeah. The Dissector in the same size is lighter than a DHR2.
We might have had a slight say in that also, that's
Revel true. Spec. That is true. Those guys did ask us, like, when they were working on that spec, like, what do we think would make sense? And yeah, we mentioned that combo. So
I think it's a great combo for that kind of riding. It's
good downcountry tire.
Yeah, lots of grip, but still rolls fast. You're not really compromising, and you still get big volume. And yeah, you can kind of ride like a 120, 115 bike over what you would normally. Yeah, if it came with some skinny, treadless tires to go fast, like that bike wouldn't be as fun.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I agree. So that bike will have Industry 9 Trail 270 wheels on it, right? Did I do the 24s on that one too? Yeah, so that one's going to be super light. That's what I ran on the Uno too. Those things, I love those things. Just super light and just gorgeous looking. We'll have E13 XCX cranks, lightest carbon production mountain bike crankset, right?
I believe so.
Is it still the lightest? I mean, they said that at one point, but you never know. Like, you never know.
I think they are for carbon. I want to say the EE Wing titaniums might like squeeze them out, but I have to double check weight on
Made
those.
by Cane Creek, FYI. Interesting. So anyways, like super, super lightweight, but good stiff cranks. And then RockShox setup. So RockShox SID up front, and then their SID Lux rear shock. And then SRAM Eagle drivetrain, but with some funky, weird stuff going on. So this is maybe not the best idea, but my thought was on a lightweight bike like that I'm going to ride locally, I really didn't need the entire range of Eagle at my fitness level, so I didn't want the 52-tooth large cog. And I wanted to like shave weight on the rear derailleur, so I was like, well, I could run SRAM 11-speed, still works great, And I don't know how, I think we collectively came up with this ridiculous idea. It was like, let's take a SRAM Eagle derailleur and take the cage off of it, put an 11-speed SRAM cage on it. Then let's take the Eagle cassette, 10 to 52, and Dremel off the 52-tooth large cog. So Liam has yet to do that, but he's going to soon, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I want to make sure the derailleur works before I take a Dremel, because I could reverse the derailleur if need be, but I can't reverse really a chopped up. That's an $400 SRAM Eagle cassette
to test.
So
we might totally and completely regret this, but
and if so, we will see. It'll be on video.
Yeah, that's true. we will openly admit if this was a terrible idea, and SRAM will look at us and just shake their head. But it's fun to do these things.
Yeah. What else are you running on that bike? Do you know?
KS Post. We went over the build spec a long time ago. So we went over the whole build spec like 2 months ago, I think, and then it was like the frame took a long time to show up because of COVID, and then every other single part took a long time to show up because of COVID, and now it's finally all here. So yeah, I almost forgot a lot of the spec. Right. So it is a KS carbon, LEV carbon post, weight weenie status right there. And I don't even remember what saddle, WTB Silverado with carbon rails. Mm-hmm. One up bars, right? One up carbon bars. I really enjoy those things. What brakes am I doing? G2 RSCs by SRAM?
G2 Ultimates, I believe.
Ooh, Ultimates. Yeah. Fancy. That's nice. Yeah, things should look really good. I'm definitely excited for that bike. I think it's going to come out looking amazing, and I just think it's going to be a really good bike for the winter time here, where I'm never going to bike parks because bike parks are closed in the winter. So perfect local ripper trail bike to have. Yeah, so that's what's currently in the build queue for me. And Liam, you also have a Revel Ranger. Somehow you got yours built up way faster than mine. I wonder how that happened.
Well, the frames...
You prioritized your own bike build over mine.
Partially. Frames arrived at the same time. I happen to be a bit more prepared and have...
low blow.
have parts laying around since I knew about this bike in spring. Once I knew this bike was coming, I said, I want one. And I started collecting parts for it kind of before COVID actually really affected the industry. So I was able to snag up a lot of parts.
Right there. That was luck.
Yeah, that was luck. But then the frame took a while to come, which is no one's fault really, except exploding industry demands.
Yep.
So it's actually pretty similar spec to yours. Same suspension, Rock Shocks front and rear, Sid Ultimate front 120, Sid Lux out back. Wheels, I actually have E13 XCX carbon wheels, 24 internal, so they're a bit narrow.
24 internal, huh? Yeah, the XC ones.
But I really like the weight on them. They do make a 28 internal, but they're about 150 grams heavier. Yeah. So I think these wheels are under 1,400 grams for stiff carbon wheels that I have yet to damage.
But then what size tires on a 24 internal width rim?
2.3 Minion DHR2s.
Front and rear?
Front and rear. EXO casing, 3C compound. So I still get a 2.3 tire. It measures about 2.3 with a 24 internal. It's wide enough to support that, but the weight of that tire and wheel combo is awesome. I really enjoy that. So that's kind of why I have it on there. And I have a bigger bike, so I can ride that, light trail XC rides. I'll throw on a lighter Ardent Race or Icon out back if I'm doing a real XC day and keep the DHR up front. Then cranks wise, I have the same E13 XCX carbon cranks. I actually do have an 11-speed SRAM drivetrain on that as well. Kind of for the same reason that Jeff does. I just don't think I really needed the full Eagle range. I like the way the smaller 11-speed derailleur looks and is not as close to tagging rocks.
Yep. Yeah, a little more clearance, shave some weight.
Yeah.
Definitely sacrifice a significant amount of gear range.
Totally.
But on a bike like that, if you have good fitness, you know, you probably don't need that full Eagle range.
No. I have reverb axis dropper post, 1-up handlebar, and a Ritchie trail stem at 45 millimeters, kind of like a low in between from a 40 and a 50. SRAM G2 RSC brakes, and I think that's, kind of covers it. Physique on Terra's saddle, carbon rails, which I kind of run on all my bikes, at least that model saddle just works for me. I'm probably on the more sensitive side for saddles, so I just kind of stick with what works and don't change it ever.
Yep. Makes sense.
And the whole bike weighs about 26 pounds, which is...
That thing's at 26?
Yeah.
With pedals?
Yeah, 26 with pedals.
Wow. That's impressive.
So hence the wheel, why I really like those wheels and tires, because if I ran something a little bit heavier, it'd probably be closer to the 26 and a half, 27 range.
Yeah. So you took a Revel Ranger, which is a downcountry bike, 120 in the front, 115 in the back, and you like parts wise leaned it towards an XC setup with those wheels at least in the drivetrain.
Wheels, yes. The tires are probably trail.
Yeah.
I consider it more of like a lightweight trail bike.
Yeah.
Because I can ride it hard.
Yeah. But like wheels and cranks wise,
cranks,
we would slant towards XC.
Definitely.
And then like your Yeti SB130, which that is, 130 in the back, that you slanted towards like way heavier enduro. So you put the longer stroke shock on it, which gives it 137?
Yeah.
So 137, and then fork you have the Zeb.
Yeah, I have a Zeb at 160, which is ultimately too much fork.
Yeah.
But we had it for testing, and I really liked the way it felt. And the plan was just to have it and get a bigger, longer travel bike and bump it up to 170, 180, where that Zeb should live. 160 is a bit overkill. And then the rest of those parts on that bike are also pretty beefy. Code RC brakes, downhill brakes, 200 rotors front and rear, DT Swiss 511 rims, which are like their downhill 30 mil internal rim. We already went over tires on that. I got a DHR double down front, DHR downhill casing rear. I do have new full range Eagle 10 to 52 tooth on that. I run
XO1.
XO1 cassette. No, XX1 cassette. I actually run GX derailleur and GX shifter on that bike.
The new one, like the new
one,
revised GX as of June it came out? Yeah.
And I actually put a XO1 derailleur bolt on there because it's a little bit sturdier bolt and it takes up some of that play for getting real nerdy. But the reason why I do the GX is I'm way more likely to smash a derailleur on the bigger travel bike when I'm going through rocks. I'm also more likely to crash, and it won't hurt as much to replace that. So
hurt your wallet.
Then I got a 1-up dropper post on there. 180 mil travel.
180 mil travel dropper.
And then a Physique on Terra's saddle again on that. Stem, I have an E13 40 mil stem paired with a carbon 35 mil riser bar. So I do have a 35 rise on that. Reason being, I really like the reach number on the 130. So by over forking it, I kind of eat up a couple millimeters of that reach.
Yep. When you over fork, longer travel fork lifts the front end of the bike up, which then like kind of pulls it back towards the rider. Correct. So that's what he meant when he said eating up the reach.
Yep. Yeah. So then I put the stem down as far as I can go. So slam it down to the headset cap to kind of bring that front end back out lengthwise. So the 35 mil riser bar puts me exactly kind of where I want the bars and the balance of that bike.
Yeah.
So I could run a 20 mil bar and 10 mil spacers and be at the same spot, but just getting nitpicky on bike setup there.
Yep. Yeah, that is. But I mean, that's part of the fun of it. I think that's why we like it, and so many of the people in the mountain bike world like it because it's just fun to change stuff and try new things and upgrade things. And I don't know. That's the whole part of the sport. That's enjoyable. So, all right. Well, cool. Hopefully that was of value to you guys. Let us know. Feel free anytime to, ping us at Worldwide Cyclery or Instagram at MTB Podcast. Or you can send an email to podcast@worldwidecyclery.com. We can answer that, no problem. And we're going to try and do some more like listener questions and stuff in the future episodes. But let us know any feedback you guys have on this, and rate your podcast, right? Isn't that what people say on podcasts? Wherever you get your podcasts, you can please leave us a rating. Sometimes I listen to the Wall Street Journal podcast and they say that as the outro. Is that right?
Leave us 5 stars.
Leave us 5 stars. Leave us 6 stars if you can. All right. Well, anyways, thank you guys for listening this long. You're amazing. DJ Pineapple, play a sound effect. Close us out.